Most of us know the gist of the story about the sword and the stone. A young man is proclaimed King of England when he alone is able to pull a sword out of a stone. But how much of this story is set in history, and where did the tale come from? Join us as we explore the folklore, origins, and historical events behind the legend of the sword and the stone. The legend of King Arthur and his knights has its roots in medieval Welsh mythology and English folktales, but Arthurian legends are found throughout Europe. Many scholars have written books on the subject, but we know that the stories come from early oral folk traditions. One of the first pieces of text we have was written by Nennius of Wales, entitled Historia Branium, or A History of the Britons. The book contains a collection of supposedly historical events that were gathered from various sources. A cleric named Nennius wrote the compilation under the patronage of the King of Gwynedd, which is a county in northwest Wales. In this text, Arthur is not a king but a warlord, a Christian soldier, and a figure that was associated with miracles. One account tells of a stone, but not one with a sword in it. This stone bears a footprint of Arthur's dog and supposedly always returns to the same spot if moved. The next historical British text to contain details of Arthur was Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regambia, the history of the kings of Britain. It was this book that inspired most of the legends about Arthur. It was written around 1136 and tracks the rise and fall of British kings, from the founding of New Troy, which would eventually become London, until the Anglo-Saxons took control of Britain. The book is a sensationalized version of British history, containing fantastical adventures that were very popular with its medieval audience. Geoffrey's text is the basis for the Arthurian legend that we know today. In his text, Arthur is a king of Britain who defended his land against the Anglo-Saxons. The story included the legendary sword Excalibur, Merlin the magician, and Arthur's wife Guinevere. The romantic details in the version may have inspired a French writer called Chrétien de Troyes, but more on him later. With the scandalous description of Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, being transformed so he can sleep with another man's wife, along with Arthur's great battles that expanded his territories, as well as other enticing elements, the tale quickly became a firm favorite with a medieval audience. However, this version leaves out many staples that appear in later stories, such as the story of the Sword and the Stone, the Knights of the Round Table, the quest for the Holy Grail, and Arthur's court at Camelot. Geoffrey claimed he was copying older Latin texts, but no such source material has ever been found. Arthur is also mentioned in the Mabinogion, which was the name given to a collection of older tales published in the 1800s. These stories first appear in two Welsh manuscripts from the 1300s. One was the White Book of Rhydderch, and the other the Red Book of Herged. The Arthurian tales from this collection are known as the Three Romances and have links to Chrétien de Troyes' works. Some historians feel the Three Romances were inspired by the French poet's work, while others believe the tales were so widely spread that they were based on folk stories that were passed on through oral tradition. The Three Romances are three tales linked to Arthurian legends and tell of the love lives of three of Arthur's knights. The first is The Lady of the Fountain, which focuses on Yvain. The second is about Geraint and Enid. The third about Peridor and his true love, Angharad Goldenhand. The legend continued to endure and be embellished. Other notable works that detail the life of Arthur and his court include Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, first published in 1485, and T.H. White's The Sword and the Stone, which focused on the early years of King Arthur and was published in 1938. Despite being mentioned in several historical texts, no tangible evidence of the legendary Arthur has ever been found. However, some historians believe that certain artifacts do point to Arthur being an actual historical figure. One site that is prominent in Arthurian legends is Tentagel Castle in Cornwall, which was, according to legend, the place of Arthur's birth. Tentagel Castle was built in the 1230s, but as it was mentioned in Geoffrey of Monmouth's book, which was written around 100 years before, historians believe that he was presumably referring to an earlier structure. Many now feel that the castle was built due to legends surrounding the site, and that it is considered an important place by locals. In the late 1990s, excavations uncovered a piece of slate that had the name Arton Yo inscribed onto it, leading many to claim that this was proof of King Arthur. However, at the time, Many British names began with Arto and later Arth, which lessened the significance of the finding. Further excavations in 2017 discovered a slate with Latin and Greek writing from the 7th century. The presence of more than one language suggests that Tentagel was a royal site and could have been the seat of ancient Cornish kings. Other findings, including items from Turkey and Spain, suggest that it was a thriving port with a trade network that stretched from the eastern Mediterranean to the Atlantic Ocean. However, it is distinctly lacking in evidence of the legendary boy who pulled the sword from the stone. Another real place that is connected to the legend is Caerleon in Wales. Caerleon was once a royal settlement with a fort, amphitheater, and baths. It is thought to be the inspiration behind Arthur's court of Camelot, and Geoffrey of Monmouth identified Caerleon as Arthur's capital. Chrétien de Troyes first mentions the name Camelot, but Caerleon is also mentioned in Chrétien's work. However, other than it being an actual place of importance in ancient Britain, no evidence of King Arthur has been found there. There is a real sword in a stone, but it's not in Wales or Cornwall. Instead, it is found in Tuscany's Montesiepi Chapel. Legend has it that a wealthy knight turned Christian missionary, Giovanni Guidotti, had visions that told him to renounce all of his earthly possessions. He responded by saying that doing that would be as difficult as splitting a stone, and he thrust his sword into a rock to demonstrate his point. To his surprise, the sword slipped straight through the rock. After this incident, Guidotti was led by a horse to a hilltop that he had seen in his visions. He was inspired to plant a cross, but not having any wood handy, he thrust his sword into the rock, where it remains to this day. Many thought the sword in the stone was a modern fake. However, studies on the sword have shown that, in all likelihood, it does date from the late 1100s, which would match up with the timeline of St. Galgano Guidotti. Interestingly, the sword in the stone detail does not appear in Arthurian legends until the 1200s, suggesting that Guidotti may have inspired this part of the story. Historians are unsure as to whether the figure of Arthur was complete fiction or whether he was based on a historical figure. There are many possible candidates for a real King Arthur, and due to the original tale citing him as a military leader rather than a king, many speculate that he was a Roman. One possible candidate is Lucius Arturuscus, a Roman officer from the late 2nd century whose military career is comparable to some of the exploits attributed to Arthur. Another option is Ambrosius Aurelianus, who was a 5th century Roman leader and may have been a descendant of Roman royalty. He won a decisive battle against the Anglo-Saxons, prompting many to cite him as a possible inspiration for the legendary king. However, Geoffrey of Monmouth mentions him in his work, describing him as the son of Constantine I and the brother of Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon. He is also cast as the person who ordered the building of Stonehenge. Another contender is Magnus Maximus, a Spanish-born soldier who led a rebellion against the Western Roman Emperor and usurped him in 383 CE. When he married Ellen, the daughter of a legendary Welsh king, he became embedded in Welsh history and was hailed as a national hero. Many subsequent medieval Welsh kings claimed that he was their ancestor. Some speculate that Arthur is an amalgamation of all these figures, with any heroic acts becoming linked to him over the years. There is another theory that Arthur was never a historical figure and has been the stuff of legend since before recorded history. As the myth of King Arthur is prominent in the bastions of the Celtic language, it seems plausible that the story originated from Celtic folktales, or may even have been a long-forgotten Celtic god whose legend has since been attributed to actual historical figures. Parts of the myth differ in each place, and each has a claim to part of the story. It is believed that the Arthurian legend was brought to Brittany in the 5th century CE by Cornish Celts, who established a colony they named Lesser Britain, which eventually evolved into Brittany. They incorporated Brocéliande Forest, now known as Paimpont Forest, into the legends as the secret home of Merlin and Vivian the Fairy. Some claim that the origin of the sword in the stone came from Ireland due to the Stone of Destiny, where the High Kings of Ireland were crowned. In this version, the story represents the consummation of marriage between the king and the goddess of sovereignty, with the sword representing the male and the stone the female deity. Legend in Scotland holds that Aidan MacGabhart, the king of Dalriada, was the inspiration for Arthur, and that his burial on Iona gave rise to the tale that he was buried at Avalon. Across Europe, Arthurian legends abound, and versions of the tale are found in Spain, France, Germany, Iceland, and even some in Norse countries, as well as across Britain. The popularity of the myth speaks to its allure, and whether we ever discover evidence of the real Arthur or not, the tale is sure to continue to grow and remain in popular culture for some time to come. It is tantalizing to think of the Arthurian legends as a link to Europe's long-forgotten Celtic heritage. The Celts once thrived across Europe, having an extensive trade network and, some think, one language. As the Celts didn't write down their history or traditions, we can only piece it together through oral folklore and archaeological finds. The Romans did their best to eradicate the Celts, but the survival of Celtic languages and hints that the Arthurian legend is of Celtic origin is a testament to the endurance of this culture. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about British history, check out our book, Historia Branium, a captivating guide to events and facts you should know about the story of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.